The first punch was always the loudest. Jasmine Carter heard it before she saw it. The sharp crack of knuckles against flesh, the collective gasp of the crowd. She didn't flinch. She'd been here before. In the dim glow of the underground ring, blood streaked the canvas like abstract art. The girl across from her spat a mouthful of crimson and raised her fists again. "You don't belong here," the girl hissed. Jazz smiled. "Funny. They said the same thing at my last school." The bell rang. She didn't hear the cheers, didn't see the money-changing hands. All she saw was the door at the back of the warehouse, the one with the serpent and dagger symbol carved into the wood. That was her real opponent tonight, and it had no idea what was coming. From which country are you enjoying this story? Please make sure to tell us in the comments. Subscribe for the next chapter.
The school bell rang, sharp and final, signaling the start of another day at Lincoln High. Students flooded the hallway, backpacks slung over shoulders, laughter bouncing off the lockers. And then there was her. Jasmine Carter, Jazz to anyone who knew her, stepped through the front doors, her dark eyes scanning the room like she was sizing up an opponent. She wasn't tall, but she carried herself like she was. Shoulders back, chin up, footsteps steady. Her hands, rough and calloused, flexed at her sides like they were used to holding something heavier than textbooks. A few kids glanced her way. Some whispered, others just smirked, already placing bets on how long the new girl would last. She ignored them. Jazz made her way down the hall, her duffel bag, not a backpack, a duffel, bumping against her hip. Inside, hidden under a change of clothes, were her gloves. Worn, beaten, smelling of leather and sweat. "Yo, watch it!" A shoulder slammed into hers. Hard. Jazz didn't stumble, didn't even blink. She just turned her head, slow, like she had all the time in the world. Tiffany Monroe stood there, flanked by her usual crew, Brianna and Lexi. Tiffany's lips curled into a smirk, her perfectly manicured fingers tapping against her hip. "You're in my way," Tiffany said, voice sugary sweet. Jazz looked down at the space between them, then back up. Ain't that much space to be in. A few nearby kids snickered. Tiffany's smile tightened. Brianna stepped forward, all fake concern. "You're new, right? Maybe you don't know how things work here yet." Jazz tilted her head. "How's that?" Lexi grinned. "People like you, they don't last." Jazz let that sit for a second. Then she smiled. Not a nervous smile. Not a scared one. The kind of smile that made the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. "Yeah," she said, voice low. "Guess we'll see." Tiffany's eyes narrowed. She stepped closer, close enough that Jazz could smell the strawberry gloss on her lips. "You got a mouth on you." Jazz didn't move. "And you got a problem with that?" The hallway had gone quiet. Kids stopped walking, stopped talking, just watched. Tiffany's hand shot out, shoving Jazz back, hard. Jazz let herself stumble. Just a step, just enough to sell it. The crowd oohed. Tiffany grinned. Victorious. That's what happens when you don't know your place. Jazz straightened, rolled her shoulders, and then she laughed. Not a nervous laugh, not a scared one, a fighter's laugh. "Oh," Jazz said, shaking her head like this was the funniest thing she'd seen all week. "You're really about to regret that." The shove reverberated through Jazz's shoulders, but her feet stayed planted. She could have easily kept her balance completely. Her trainer's voice echoed in her head. "Root yourself to the canvas, girl. Ain't nobody moving you unless you let him." But she gave them the stumble they wanted to see. For now. Tiffany's smirk widened as she saw Jazz take that half step back. The crowd of students pressed in closer, phones already sneaking out of pockets. Lincoln High's morning entertainment had arrived. "You gonna cry now?" Lexi taunted, twirling a strand of bleach-damaged hair around her finger. "Run home to mama?" Jazz flexed her fingers at her sides, feeling the familiar roughness of her knuckles. She'd heard worse trash talk in the ring. This was amateur hour. "My mama would eat y'all alive before breakfast," she said, deadpan. A few scattered laughs broke out before Tiffany's glare silenced them. The warning bell rang. Tiffany stepped closer, her designer perfume clashing with the cheap gum she was snapping between her teeth. "This isn't over, ghetto girl." "Looking forward to it," Jazz said, shouldering past them toward her first period. The whispers followed her like a wake. "Who does she think she is? Tiff's gonna destroy her. $5 says she transfers by Friday." Jazz tuned them out. She'd been through this song and dance before at 3 different schools since her dad's military transfers started. The names changed, but the game stayed the same. Only this time, she wasn't 12 anymore, and she'd spent the last 4 years learning how to hit back properly. The classroom smelled like old textbooks and industrial cleaner. Jazz took the empty seat in the back corner, the spot with the clearest lines to the door and the best view of the room. Old habits. Jasmine Carter? The teacher, Mr. Kowalski, according on the board, barely glanced up from his attendance sheet. "Here," Jazz said, then added, "It's Jazz." He finally looked up, taking in her braids, the faint scar above her eyebrow, the way her hoodie sleeves covered what the school dress code called excessive wristwear, meaning her wraps. "Transfer papers say you're coming from Roosevelt High in Detroit?" A few heads turned at that. The whispers started up again. Jazz kept her face neutral. "Yes, sir." Mr. Kowalski's eyebrows climbed his forehead. "Quite the change of scenery for you." He said it like he was waiting for her to flinch. Jazz just stared back until he broke eye contact first. Page 142. "We're covering the Civil War." As the lesson droned on, Jazz's mind wandered back to last night's training session. The way the heavy bag had shuddered under her combinations. The satisfying burn in her shoulders as she held her guard up for 3-minute rounds. Her trainer Marcus barking corrections. "Keep that chin tucked. You eat 1 clean shot at Golden Gloves and it's lights out." A folded note landed on her desk. Jazz unfolded it carefully under the desk, expecting some racist trash or threat. Instead it read, "Don't let Tiff get to you. She's all bark." Jazz scanned the room. A wiry kid with glasses too rose up, gave her the slightest nod before turning back to his notes. She crumpled the note and went back to pretending to pay attention. Lunchtime arrived like a gladiator entering the arena. Jazz could feel the eyes on her as she moved through the cafeteria line. The lunch lady gave her an extra scoop of mashed potatoes, the universal code for poor kid. Jazz didn't correct her. The cafeteria was a battlefield of cliques. Football players holding court at the center tables. Band kids laughing too loud in the corner. And Tiffany's crew holding court by the windows, their table an island of designer bags and overpriced salads. Jazz spotted the note kid Marcus, presumably, sitting alone with a battered copy of some fantasy novel. She slid into the seat across from him. "So you're the welcoming committee?" Marcus nearly choked on his chocolate milk. You look like you could use an ally." "And what makes you think I need one?" He adjusted his glasses. "Because everyone needs one, even if they can handle themselves." His eyes flicked to her hands, where the telltale calluses peeked out from her sleeves. "Especially if they can handle themselves." Jazz felt the first genuine smile of the day tug at her lips. "You're observant." "Survival skill," Marcus said. "When you're 5 feet 4 inches and allergic to gym class, you learn to read a room." He lowered his voice. "Tiffany's dad owns half the town. Teachers won't help you. But if you can last until Friday, she'll get bored and move on." Jazz took a bite of the rubbery chicken patty. "What if I don't want to wait until Friday?" Before Marcus could answer, a shadow fell across their table. Tiffany stood there, flanked by her usual entourage, holding a full carton of chocolate milk. "Ah, how cute! The loser and the new girl." She tilted the carton meaningfully. "This seat's taken." Jazz didn't look up. "Plenty of other seats." Tiffany's smile turned vicious. "I said, this seat's taken." The carton tilted further, the milk threatening to spill. Marcus tensed. Jazz kept eating. The milk hit the table with a wet slap, splashing across Jazz's tray and onto her hoodie. The cafeteria erupted in a mix of gasps and laughter. Jazz set her fork down slowly, wiped her hands on her napkin, then stood up. For the first time, Tiffany had to look up to meet her eyes. Something flickered in her expression, the first hint of doubt. "You got something to say?" Tiffany challenged. but her voice lacked its usual confidence. Jazz leaned in close enough to whisper, "After school. Back parking lot. Bring your whole crew if you want." She pulled back, loud enough for everyone to hear now. "And Tiffany? Where's something you don't mind getting ruined?" The cafeteria exploded in chatter as Jazz walked away, leaving her ruined lunch behind. Marcus caught up to her at the doors. "Are you insane? She's going to destroy you." Jazz finally let her grin show. "Yeah, I'm real scared." The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of whispers and stares. Jazz caught snippets as she moved between classes. Heard she's got a record. From Detroit, probably in a gang. Tiffany's gonna put her in the hospital. By final bell, half the school seemed to be heading toward the back parking lot. Jazz took her time, stopping at her locker to retrieve her duffel. Inside, her gloves waited. Marcus appeared at her elbow, pale as a ghost. "You can still bail. I can call my mom. She'll give you a ride dash." "Relax," Jazz said, pulling out her phone. She fired off a quick text to Marcus, "Record everything." Then she handed him the duffel. "Hold this for me." The parking lot had turned into an impromptu arena. Students formed a loose circle, phones at the ready. At the center, Tiffany stood with her arms crossed, wearing a smug expression and a brand new white designer hoodie. "Took you long enough," Tiffany called as Jazz approached. "I was starting to think you chickened out." Jazz rolled her shoulders, feeling the familiar looseness settle into her muscles. "Nah, just wanted to give you time to stretch. Wouldn't want you pulling something." The crowd oohed. Tiffany's face darkened. "You're gonna regret this." "That's the plan?" Jazz asked, bouncing lightly on the balls of her feet. "Talk me to death?" Tiffany lunged, fingers curled into claws aiming for Jazz's face. It was almost too easy. Jazz slipped the wild swing, pivoting on her back foot like she'd done 1,000 times in the ring. As Tiffany stumbled past, Jazz tapped her on the back of the head. Not hard, just enough to make the point. "Missed me." The crowd erupted. Tiffany whirled, face flushed with anger now. She came in swinging wildly, all rage and no technique. Jazz dodged, weaved, let Tiffany wear herself out. A right swing went wide, a left hook that wouldn't have budged a feather. Tiffany was panting now, frustration turning her movements jerky and uncoordinated. "Stay still," Tiffany shrieked, charging again. This time, Jazz didn't dodge. She planted her feet and threw a single, controlled punch, pulling it at the last second so it barely grazed Tiffany's nose. It was enough. Tiffany stumbled back, more from surprise than impact, tripping over her own feet to land hard on her backside. The crowd went dead silent. Jazz stepped forward, looking down at the stunned bully. "Now," she said calmly, "are we done here?" Tiffany's face crumpled. Tears of humiliation streaked her perfect makeup. You can't do this to me." Jazz leaned down, voice low. "I just did." She straightened, addressing the crowd. "Anyone else got a problem with me?" No one moved. Jazz turned back to Tiffany. "Good. Now here's how this is gonna go. You leave me alone. You leave Marcus alone. You leave everyone who can't fight back alone. Or next time." She let her voice drop to a whisper only Tiffany could hear. "Next time I won't pull my punches." She turned and walked through the parted crowd to where Marcus stood, mouth hanging open, her duffel clutched in white-knuckled hands. "Still think I needed an ally?" Jazz asked, taking the bag. Marcus just shook his head. "I think Lincoln High just found its new queen bee." Jazz snorted. "Nah, I ain't about that." She slung the duffel over her shoulder. "But they'll think twice before messing with anyone again." As they walked away, the whispers started up again, but this time they sounded different. "Did you see how she moved? Like a freaking ninja. Tiffany didn't even land one hit." Jazz smiled to herself. First days were always the hardest. But something told her this one would be her last first day for a long time. The whispers followed Jazz all the way to the bus stop. Students who had ignored her that morning now stared openly, some with awe, others with nervous curiosity. A freshman even tripped over his own feet trying to get out of her way. Marcus kept pace beside her, his fingers tapping anxiously against his backpack strap. You realize you just made yourself public enemy number one, right? Tiffany's not gonna let this slide. Jazz shrugged, adjusting the weight of her duffel. She shouldn't have started something she couldn't finish. A sleek black SUV rolled up to the curb before Marcus could respond. The window slid down, revealing a man in his late 40s with sharp eyes and a salt and pepper buzz cut. "Get in," he said, voice gruff. Marcus stiffened. Who's that?" Jazz sighed. "My dad." She yanked the car door open and tossed her bag into the back seat before sliding in. Marcus hesitated, then scrambled in after her when Jazz jerked her head in a come-on motion. The second the door shut, her father's gaze flicked to her in the rear-view mirror. "So," Jazz crossed her arms. "So, first day." "Yep." His grip tightened slightly on the steering wheel. "And?" Jazz exhaled through her nose. "And nothing. It was fine." Her dad's eyes narrowed. "That's funny, because I just got a call from Principal Higgins." Marcus made a small, strangled noise in the back of his throat. Jazz didn't react. Her dad continued, voice dangerously calm. "He said there was an incident after school. Some kind of altercation in the parking lot." Jazz kept her face blank. "Was there?" The car fell silent. Marcus looked like he was contemplating jumping out of a moving vehicle. Then, her dad snorted. "Damn right there was." He shook his head, a smirk tugging at his mouth. "Principal said some girl tried to start a fight with you and ended up on her ass in front of half the school." Jazz blinked. "He told you that?" "Not in those exact words." Her dad chuckled. "But I know how principals talk when they're trying not to sound impressed." He glanced at her again. "You pull your punches?" "Of course." "Good." He nodded once, satisfied. "No need to show your full hand on the first day." Marcus's head swiveled between them like he was watching a tennis match. "Wait, you're not mad?" Jazz's dad raised an eyebrow. "Why would I be mad? Ain't no rule saying my daughter's gotta be someone's punching bag." He caught Jazz's eye in the mirror again. "But you are gonna have detention for a week." Jazz groaned. "What? That's bull. Language. Asterisk nonsense star. She started it. And you finished it." Her dad shrugged. "School's gotta save face. Take the detention, keep your head down, and next time." He smirked. "Make sure there aren't so many witnesses." Jazz rolled her eyes but didn't argue. Marcus, meanwhile, looked like his entire worldview had been appended. "Your dad is cool with you fighting?" Jazz's dad laughed. "She's been throwing hands since she was 6. Only difference now is she's got the training to do it right." He turned onto Marcus's street. "You live in the blue house, right?" Marcus gaped. "How did you?" "Military intelligence." Jazz's dad winked. "Also, you're wearing the school ID with your address on it." Marcus looked down at his lanyard and flushed. "Right." The car rolled to a stop. Marcus hesitated before getting out. Thanks. For the ride." "And Jazz." He met her eyes. "Thanks for today." Jazz nodded. "See you tomorrow." As the SUV pulled away, her dad glanced at her. "He seems nice." Jazz stared out the window. "He's all right." A beat of silence. Then, "You like him?" Asterisk dad. Asterisk. "What?" "I'm just saying." "Don't." He laughed but let it drop. ##### the next day. Jazz expected the stares when she walked into school. She expected the whispers. What she didn't expect was the group of freshmen who practically bowed as she passed. One even whispered, Asterisk, "That's her. That's the girl who took down Tiffany Monroe." Asterisk. Jazz ignored them and headed to her locker. She found Marcus already there, shifting nervously from foot to foot. "You might want to brace yourself," he said. Jazz frowned. "Why?" He pointed down the hall. Tiffany stood with her usual crew, but instead of sneers, their faces were tight with tension. And Tiffany's nose was very noticeably red. Jazz sighed. "Here we go." But Tiffany didn't charge at her. Didn't even glare. Instead, she lifted her chin, like she was trying to salvage some dignity, and turned sharply on her heel, her minions scrambling after her. Marcus exhaled. "Ha!" Jazz shrugged. "Told you. All bark." Then the intercom crackled to life. "Jasmine Carter. Report to the principal's office immediately." Marcus winced. Or maybe not. Jazz adjusted her backpack. "Guess we'll see." #### principal's office. Principal Higgins was a thin man with a permanently tired expression. He steepled his fingers as Jazz sat across from him. "Miss Carter, I assume you know why you're here." Jazz kept her face neutral. "Because Tiffany's dad owns half the town?" The principal's eye twitched. "Because fighting is against school policy." Jazz leaned back in her chair. "So is bullying. But I didn't see Tiffany in here when she dumped milk on me." Higgins sighed. "Look, I get it. New school trying to fit in. But we can't have students settling things with violence." Jazz almost laughed. Violence? She'd barely touched Tiffany. If she'd actually thrown a real punch, that girl would still be in the hospital. But she kept her mouth shut. Higgins slid a detention slip across the desk. 1 week. After school. Starting today. Jazz took it without argument. Then Higgins hesitated. For what it's worth. He lowered his voice. "Tiffany's had this coming for a long time." Jazz blinked. Higgins quickly straightened, back to his professional tone. "Dismissed." By lunch, the entire school knew 3 things. 1. Tiffany Monroe had been humiliated. 2. The new girl wasn't someone to mess with. 3. The teachers definitely weren't as upset about it as they pretended to be. Jazz took her usual seat across from Marcus, who was practically vibrating with excitement. "You're legendary now. Do you know what people are saying?" Jazz took a bite of her sandwich. "Don't care." Marcus ignored her. "They're saying you're some kind of underground fighter. That you got expelled from your last school for knocking out a teacher." Jazz choked. Asterisk what? Asterisk. Marcus grinned. "I know, right? It's awesome." Jazz shook her head. "People are stupid." Then a shadow fell over their table. Jazz looked up, expecting Tiffany. Instead, it was a tall, broad-shouldered guy with a varsity jacket and a smirk. "Hey," he said, leaning on their table. "You're the new girl, right? The one who put Tiffany in her place." Jazz eyed him. "What's it to you?" He grinned. "I'm Jason, captain of the wrestling team." He extended a hand. "We could use someone like you." Jazz didn't take it. "Use me for what?" Jason's smile widened. "Let's just say, Tiffany's not the only problem at this school." Jazz exchanged a glance with Marcus. This was not over. The wrestling room smelled like sweat and stale protein shakes. Jazz stood in the doorway, arms crossed, watching as Jason and his teammates circled each other on the mats. Their movements were aggressive, but controlled, nothing like Tiffany's wild swings. Marcus hovered nervously behind her. "You don't have to do this, you know." Jason spotted them and waved them in. "Carter, get in here." Jazz stepped forward, her sneakers squeaking against the waxed floor. The room fell quiet as the wrestlers turned to stare. A few smirked. One, a thick-necked guy with a buzz cut, cracked his knuckles. Jason clapped her on the shoulder. "Team, this is Jasmine Carter, the girl who made Tiffany Monroe eat pavement." A few chuckles. Buzzcut didn't laugh. Jazz shrugged Jason's hand off. "You said you had a problem." Jason's grin faded. He lowered his voice. "Not here." He jerked his head toward a side office. "Private talk." Jazz followed, Marcus trailing like a nervous shadow. The office was cramped, walls covered in tournament brackets and faded team photos. Jason shut the door and leaned against the desk. "Here's the deal," he said. "Tiffany's just the tip of the iceberg. There's a group of guys, seniors, football players, who think they run this school. They steal from lockers, shove kids into lockers, and the teachers turn a blind eye because they're state champs." Jazz raised an eyebrow. "And you want me to... what?" "Fight your battles for you." Jason's jaw tightened. "I want you to help us stop them." Marcus frowned. How? Jason pulled out his phone and tapped the screen. A video played, a hulking football player shoving a scrawny kid into a bathroom stall. The kid's face was blurred, but his terrified whimpers weren't. Jazz's fingers twitched. They do this weekly, Jason said, and they film it, post it online. The kid in that video? He transferred last month. Couldn't take it anymore. Jazz stared at the frozen image. Why not go to the principal? Jason barked a laugh. Coach Reynolds is the football coach. You think he's gonna bench his star players? He leaned in. But if someone outside the team were to, say, embarrass them publicly? Jazz met his eyes. You want me to fight them? I want you to humiliate them, Jason corrected. Make them look weak. Once their reputation's gone, the teachers will actually have to do something. Marcus cleared his throat. That's insane. You're talking about taking on multiple guys twice her size. Jason smirked. You saw what she did to Tiffany. Jazz exhaled slowly. Names. Jason blinked. What? Give me their names. Hashtag the roster. 1. Derek "The Wall" Malone, offensive lineman, 6 feet 4 inches, 280 pounds. Slow but hits like a truck. 2. Cole Richter, quarterback, fast, cocky, always has 2 lackeys with him. 3. Ryan Pike, Derek's twin brother. Less brains, same brutality. Jazz memorized them. And they pick on kids every Thursdays. After last bell, they corner someone in the east hallway where there's no cameras. Jason hesitated. Look, I know it's asking a lot. Jazz stood. I'll think about it. Marcus scrambled up after her. You're not actually considering this, right? Jazz didn't answer until they were back in the hallway. Then she pulled out her phone and texted her dad. Asterisk, gonna be late. Wrestling team tryouts. Asterisk. Marcus gaped. You're joining them? Jazz pocketed her phone. Nope. She cracked her knuckles. But I am gonna need witnesses. Thursday afternoon. The east hallway was eerily quiet after last bell, the flickering fluorescent lights casting long shadows. Jazz leaned against the lockers, her hoodie sleeves pulled low over her hands. Just another vulnerable-looking kid waiting to be preyed upon. Marcus fidgeted beside her, his fingers drumming against his thigh. This is a terrible idea. Jazz kept her eyes on the far doorway. You don't have to stay. I do actually, Marcus muttered. Someone's gotta call an ambulance when Derek folds you in half. A door slammed. Heavy footsteps echoed down the hall. Jazz exhaled slowly, rolling her shoulders loose. Showtime. Derek Malone rounded the corner first, his massive frame blocking most of the light. Cole Richter followed, tossing a football lazily in one hand. Ryan Pike brought up the rear, cracking his neck like he was warming up for a highlight reel. Cole's smirk widened when he spotted them. Well, well. Fresh meat. Derek cracked his knuckles. You lost, new girl? Jazz kept her voice small. I was just leaving. She made a show of stepping back, bumping into Marcus. Ryan laughed. Scared already? He snatched Marcus's backpack and dumped it on the floor. Oops. Jazz's jaw tightened, but she didn't move. Wait for it. Cole stepped closer, looming over her. Heard you put on a show with Tiffany. He flicked her hood. But we ain't no basic bitches. Derek grabbed her wrist. Let's see how tough you really. Jazz moved. Her free hand shot up, fingers jabbing hard into Derek's pressure point just below the collarbone. The giant gasped, his grip loosening in shock. Jazz twisted free, pivoting to drive her elbow into Cole's ribs as he lunged. He wheezed, stumbling into Ryan. Marcus scrambled back, phone raised. It's recording. Derek roared, charging like a bull. Jazz ducked under his swing, planting a sharp kick behind his knee. The joint buckled, just enough for her to shove him face first into the lockers. Clang. Cole recovered faster, tackling her to the ground. Jazz rolled with the impact, using his momentum to flip him over her shoulder. He crashed into a trash can, sending it skidding. Ryan froze, eyes darting between her and his downed brothers. Jazz bounced to her feet, grinning. "What's wrong? Thought this was fun for you."
Derek wiped blood from his nose, his face purpling with rage.
"You're dead." The fire alarm blared. Marcus waved his phone frantically. "Principal's coming. And I definitely got all that on video." The brothers hesitated. Cole spat on the floor. "This ain't over." They hauled Derek up and bolted just as footsteps pounded around the corner. Principal Higgins skidded to a stop, panting. "What the hell is?" He took in the overturned trash can, Marcus's spilled backpack, Jazz's barely ruffled hoodie. Jazz blinked innocently. Tripped. Higgins's eye twitched. Hashtag the fallout. By morning, the video was everywhere. Hashtag Lincoln High fight trended statewide. The footage, clearly showing the footballers attacking first, forced the school's hand. Derek, Cole, and Ryan got suspended. Coach Reynolds' face turned tomato red during the announcement. Jason cornered Jazz at her locker. "You actually did it." Jazz shrugged. "Told you I would." He lowered his voice. "There's a party tonight. Teams celebrating. You should come." Marcus stiffened. "Bad idea. Cole's friends will be there." Jason rolled his eyes. "Relax, nerd. It's at my place. Safe zone." He smirked at Jazz. "Bring your little bodyguard if you want." When he left, Marcus grabbed her arm. "Don't go. Something's off about this."
Jazz watched Jason high-five a teammate.
"Yeah," she murmured. "I know." The bass from Jason's house pulsed through the sidewalk before Jazz even reached the driveway. Strobe lights flickered through the windows, silhouettes of dancing students throwing exaggerated shadows against the curtains. Marcus lagged half a step behind her, his fingers worrying the strap of his backpack like he was mentally calculating escape routes. "You can still bail," Jazz said without turning around. Marcus sped up to walk beside her. "And let you walk into whatever this is alone." "Not happening." Jazz smirked but didn't argue. The front door was propped open with a red Solo cup, the entryway packed with bodies. The smell of cheap beer and sweat hit like a wall. Jason spotted them immediately, detaching from a group of wrestlers to sling an arm around Jazz's shoulders. The guest of honor. His breath reeked of peppermint schnapps. "Come on, we've got a surprise for you." Marcus grabbed Jazz's wrist. "Don't." Jason rolled his eyes. "Relax, dude. It's a gift." He leaned in closer to Jazz. "Something to show our appreciation." Jazz peeled his arm off her. "Lead the way." The backyard was less crowded but no less chaotic. A bonfire crackled in a rusted-out oil drum, casting flickering light across a circle of folding chairs. And sitting in the center chair, Tiffany Monroe. Her wrists were duct-taped to the armrests. Jazz froze. "What the hell is this?" Jason grinned, spreading his arms wide. "Justice!" The wrestlers around him cheered. One tossed him a roll of duct tape. "Figured you'd want front row seats for Tiffany's. Let's call it a behavioral adjustment." Tiffany's mascara ran in black streaks down her face. "Please." "Shut up," Jason snapped before turning back to Jazz. "See, we've all been waiting for someone to put these rich bitches in their place. And you." He pressed the duct tape into her hands. "You're perfect." The firelight glinted off the silver roll. Jazz turned it over slowly in her palms. Marcus made a strangled noise behind her. Jason misread her hesitation. "Don't worry, we already got started." He nodded to Tiffany's designer shoes, now scuffed and covered in something sticky. Poured her dad's expensive vodka all over them. Symbolic, right? Jazz's fingers tightened around the tape. Marcus grabbed her elbow. "Jazz, don't." She shook him off, stepped forward. The circle of wrestlers parted for her, their faces eager. Tiffany flinched as Jazz loomed over her. Then, Jazz ripped the duct tape off Tiffany's wrists in one sharp motion. Silence. Jason's smile died. "What are you doing?" Jazz tossed the tape into the fire. It melted instantly. "This isn't justice. It's bullshit." Tiffany gasped, rubbing her raw wrists. The wrestlers exchanged confused glances. Jason's face darkened. "After everything she's done, And that makes you better?
Jazz turned to face the crowd, her voice cutting through the bass-heavy music.
You wanted me to fight your battles? Fine. But this... She kicked over Tiffany's chair, sending the girl scrambling back. This asterisk is just cowardice with an audience.
A muscle in Jason's jaw twitched.
You're making a mistake. Marcus finally found his voice. No, she's not.
He pointed to Jason's forearm, where a faded tattoo peeked out from under his sleeve, a serpent coiled around a dagger.
That's the same ink Cole Richter's crew has. You're not trying to stop them. You're trying to replace them. The wrestlers shifted uneasily. Jason's smile turned venomous. So what if I am? At least I'd actually earn it. He stepped into Jazz's space. Unlike some people who think one lucky punch makes them queen. Jazz didn't blink. Try me.
For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then Jason lunged.
Jazz saw it coming, the telegraphed right hook, the way he overcommit. She ducked, driving her fist up into his solar plexus. He folded like a lawn chair, wheezing. The crowd erupted. Someone threw a bottle. It shattered near Jazz's feet. Marcus yanked her back as a brawl exploded around them. Wrestlers turning on each other, chairs flying. Tiffany grabbed Jazz's arm. My car's out front. They ran.
The engine of Tiffany's BMW roared to life.
She white-knuckled the steering wheel, speeding away from the chaos. Those animals. Drive faster, Marcus panted from the back seat, watching the rear window. Jazz kept her eyes on the side mirror. No headlights followed.
Yeah.
Tiffany sniffled, wiping her nose. I hate you. Jazz snorted. Welcome to the club. The car swerved onto the main road. Tiffany's hands shook. They were going to light my shoes on fire. Marcus leaned forward. Where are we going? Jazz checked her phone. One new text from her dad. Heard about the party. You okay? She typed back. Fine. Staying at Marcus's tonight. A lie, but necessary. Tiffany turned onto a tree-lined street. Mansions looming behind iron gates. My parents are in Aspen. We can hide here. The garage door creaked open. Inside, the house was cold and silent, all marble floors and abstract art. Tiffany collapsed onto a leather couch, finally breaking into full-body sobs. Marcus awkwardly patted her shoulder. There. Jazz prowled the living room, checking windows. We need to. The doorbell rang. All three froze. Tiffany whimpered. They followed us. Jazz peered through the peephole. Not Jason. Cole Richter stood on the porch, his nose still bandaged from their fight. And beside him, Principal Higgins. The doorbell rang again, longer this time. A fist pounded against the wood. Jazz stepped back from the peephole. Tiffany had gone bone white, her fingers digging into the couch cushions. Marcus looked like he might throw up. Back door, Jazz whispered. They moved as one, Tiffany grabbing her keys, Marcus snatching up his backpack. Jazz led the way through the darkened kitchen, her pulse loud in her ears. The back door opened silently onto a moonlit patio. A shadow moved by the pool. Going somewhere? Cole stepped into the light, his grin sharp under the bandages. Principal Higgins loomed behind him, his usual tired expression replaced with something colder. Jazz shoved Tiffany behind her. What do you want? Higgins sighed. We need to talk. Inside. #hashtag the truth. The living room felt smaller with Cole sprawled in an armchair like he owned the place. Higgins remained standing, his hands clasped behind his back. You've caused quite the mess, Miss Carter, he said. Jazz didn't sit. I didn't start this. No. But you escalated it. Higgins paced to the fireplace. Jason was supposed to keep the wrestling team in line. Cole handles the football team. An equilibrium. He shot her a look. Then you showed up. Marcus made a choked noise. You're working with them? Cole laughed. He's not working with us, nerd. He's scared of us. Higgins' jaw tightened, but he didn't deny it. Tiffany found her voice. My father will. Your father knows, Higgins said flatly. Everyone with power in this town knows. We looked the other way, They don't burn the school down. Simple. Jazz's fingers curled into fists. So what? You're here to warn me off? No. Higgins reached into his jacket and tossed a folded flyer onto the coffee table. I'm here to offer you a job. Jazz didn't move. Marcus picked it up, his eyes widening. Underground Fight Night, he read aloud. Asterisk, champion's purse. $5,000. Asterisk. Cole leaned forward. Jason was right about one thing. You are perfect. His smile turned predatory. Small. Fast. And nobody misses a black girl who disappears after a bad fight. The room went very still. Jazz exhaled slowly. You want me to throw fights? At first, Cole admitted. Then, when the bets get big enough. He mimed a gun to his head. Accidents happen. Higgins wouldn't meet her eyes. Tiffany made a small, broken sound. Marcus's hands shook. Jazz stared at the flyer. Then, she laughed. Cole blinked. What's funny? Jazz grinned, sharp as a knife. You think I'm dumb enough to believe you'd let me walk out of here after telling me this? Higgins paled. Cole's smile vanished. Jazz cracked her knuckles. Guess we're doing this now. Cole moved first. A lazy haymaker meant to intimidate, not connect. Jazz ducked under it, driving her fist into his still healing ribs. He gasped, stumbling back into Higgins. Marcus yanked Tiffany toward the hall. Run! Jazz barely registered their footsteps. Her world narrowed to Cole's enraged snarl, the way he reached for his waistband. Knife. The blade flashed in the lamplight. Jazz sidestepped, catching his wrist and slamming it down on the marble countertop. Bone cracked. Cole screamed. Higgins made a break for the door. Jazz lunged, tackling him to the floor. His glasses skittered across the tile. Please, he gasped. They made me. Jazz hauled him up by his tie. Names. Everyone involved. Outside, tires screeched. Cole was gone. Police lights painted the walls blue an hour later. Jazz sat on the curb, her hands wrapped in a borrowed blanket despite not being cold. Tiffany was giving a tearful statement to a female officer. Marcus hovered nearby, his phone still recording. Detective Ruiz, a no-nonsense woman with salt and pepper braids, knelt beside Jazz. You understand how this looks, right? Principal missing, star athlete in the hospital, and you at the center of it. Jazz met her eyes. Check Marcus's footage. Ruiz sighed. Oh, we will. She stood, brushing off her slacks. Your dad's on his way. Military police background means they're taking this very seriously. Jazz watched a CSI tech bag Higgins abandon glasses. What happens now? Ruiz followed her gaze. Now. She pulled out a card. You come downtown tomorrow. Tell us everything. The card read, FBI Youth Violence Task Force. Jazz pocketed it as headlights turned into the driveway. Her dad's SUV rolled to a stop, the door slamming before it fully parked. He took one look at her and pulled her into a crushing hug. His voice was rough in her ear. Pack your gloves. We're going on a trip. The safe house wasn't a house at all. It was a weathered brownstone in Philadelphia, tucked between a bodega and a laundromat, the kind of place people walked past without noticing. Jazz's duffel bag hit the creaky wooden floor with a thud as she surveyed the space. Bare walls, a single couch, and a kitchenette that smelled faintly of stale coffee. Her dad locked the door behind them, sliding 3 deadbolts into place. We stay here until the FBI clears things up. Jazz rubbed her bruised knuckles. And if they don't? He didn't answer. Just pulled out his phone and set it on the counter. No contact with anyone until further notice. Not Marcus. Not even your trainer. Jazz's stomach twisted. You're kidding. Those boys you humiliated? They're connected. Jazz. Dangerously connected. He finally met her eyes. The kind of people who make problems disappear. A chill crawled up her spine. She thought of Marcus's shaky hands as he filmed. Tiffany's tear-streaked face. What about them? Her dad exhaled. Marcus is in protective custody. Tiffany's family lawyered up. He hesitated. But Cole Richter? He's gone. Jazz froze. Gone like vanished. No hospital records. No police report. Just poof. He ran a hand over his buzz cut. That's not amateur hour, Jazz. That's professional cleanup. The weight of it settled over her. She'd been in fights before. Back alley scraps, tournament rings. But this was something else. She turned to the single window, its blinds drawn tight. So what do we do? Her dad pulled a burner phone from his pocket. We wait. #, the waiting game. 3 days passed in a blur of canned soup and silent tension. Jazz did push-ups on the creaky floor, shadowboxed in the narrow hallway, anything to keep her muscles from going stiff. Her dad spent hours on the burner phone, speaking in low codes she didn't understand. On the fourth night, the TV news finally mentioned Lincoln High. Ongoing investigation into alleged fight clubs operating within several suburban school districts, the anchor recited. Footage leaked online appears to show students being coerced into. Her dad muted it. Jazz clenched her fists. Marcus got the video out. Or someone let him. Her dad's jaw was tight. Either way, we're not breaking cover. Jazz stared at the silent screen, where a pixelated version of Cole's sneering face flashed for half a second before cutting to commercial. She wondered if he was still alive. #, the break. The knock came at 3:17 a.m. Jazz was awake instantly, her body coiled tight on the couch. Her dad was already at the door, gun drawn. "Password," he growled. "Golden Gloves 24, came the reply. Her dad lowered the gun and opened the door. Detective Ruiz stepped inside, her braids tucked under a hoodie, a file folder clutched in one hand. "We've got a problem." Jazz sat up. "Marcus?" "Safe. For now." Ruiz dropped the folder on the coffee table. Inside were crime scene photos, a charred SUV, a body bag. Cole Richter turned up in the Schuylkill River. Professional hit. Jazz's stomach lurched. Her dad flipped through the photos. "Who's cleaning house?" Ruiz hesitated. "You ever hear of the Zaj?" Jazz's dad went very still. Ruiz tapped the photo of Cole's body. "They're Eastern European. Specialize in underground fight rings, human trafficking, the works. And they own half the cops in your old town." Jazz's mouth went dry. "So what does that mean for us?" Ruiz met her eyes. "It means you've got two choices. Witness protection, new name, new life, no boxing, or..." She slid a business card across the table. "Special Agent L. Carter, FBI Youth Violence Task Force." Jazz picked it up. "Or..." Ruiz smiled grimly. "Or you help us take them down." Jazz stared at the card until the letters blurred. Her dad's silence was heavier than any argument. Ruiz leaned forward. "We've been building a case on the Zaj for years. But we need someone on the inside, someone they'd want to recruit." Her gaze flicked to Jazz's hands. "A fighter." Jazz's pulse roared in her ears. "You want me to join them?" "Not join. Infiltrate." Ruiz pulled out another photo, a flyer for an underground fight club. "They scout at these events. And after your little show at Lincoln High, you're exactly their type." Jazz's dad finally spoke, his voice rough. "No." Ruiz didn't flinch. "It's her choice." Jazz turned the card over. Then, she pocketed it. Her dad closed his eyes. Ruiz stood. "Training starts tomorrow. You'll report to..." A phone buzzed. Ruiz checked hers, then Jazz's dad's. Neither had moved. The burner phone on the kitchen counter lit up. Unknown number. Jazz reached for it. Her dad grabbed her wrist. "Don't." The phone buzzed again. Then a third time. Jazz yanked free and flipped it open. One text. Asterisk, "Marcus isn't as safe as you think. Tick-tock, champ." Asterisk. And below it, a live feed of Marcus, blindfolded, duct tape over his mouth. Jazz's hands shook. "We have to go. Now." Ruiz was already on her phone, barking orders. "Trace this number. I need a team at the safe house 5 minutes ago." Jazz's dad grabbed his keys. Where would they take him? Ruiz's face was grim. Somewhere with no witnesses. Jazz's mind raced. The abandoned auto shop where Cole's crew hung out? The woods beyond the football field? Then, the wrestling gym, she realized. Jason bragged about having keys to the equipment shed. Said no one ever checks it. Ruiz relayed the info into her phone. Jazz was already at the door. Her dad blocked her path. "You're not going." Jazz shoved past him. "Watch me." Hashtag the shed. The high school parking lot was eerily empty at 4 a.m. Jazz crouched behind a dumpster, watching the detached equipment shed behind the wrestling gym. A single light leaked through the boarded-up windows. Ruiz's team had set up a perimeter, but Jazz hadn't waited for their signal. She'd slipped away the second the FBI van parked. Now, creeping closer, she heard voices. "Should have just dumped him with Cole. Asterisk, boss wants proof first." Video of the girl walking in. Asterisk. Jazz's blood ran cold. Bait. She circled to the back, where a rusted vent offered entry. The screws came loose with a squeak. Inside smelled like mildew and sweat. Peering through the shelves of old mats, she saw Marcus tied to a chair, Jason pacing beside him with a knife. "She's not coming," Jason muttered. "Should have known a coward." Jazz stepped into the light. "You called." Jason whirled. Marcus jerked against his bonds. Jazz kept her hands visible. "Let him go. It's me you want." Jason's grin was feral. He pulled out his phone, hitting record. "Say that again for the camera." Jazz didn't blink. "I'm here. Let Marcus leave." Jason laughed. "Oh, he's not going anywhere." He flipped the knife. "See, the boss wants insurance." Jazz's fingers twitched. She could take Jason. Easy. But the second she moved, whoever was watching that feed would know. Marcus's eyes widened behind the blindfold. A warning. Too late. The shed door burst open. Two hulking figures stepped in. Men she didn't recognize, their necks tattooed with the same serpent and dagger mark. Zudge. The taller one smiled. "Jasmine Carter. We've heard so much about you." Jazz set her stance. "Funny. I've never heard of you at all." The man chuckled. "You will." He tossed a pair of handcuffs at her feet. "Put these on, or we start cutting pieces off your friend." Jason raised the knife to Marcus's throat. Jazz bent slowly, never breaking eye contact. The cuffs were cold in her hands. Then, sirens. The men cursed. Jason hesitated. Jazz moved. Her foot hooked Jason's ankle, sending him crashing into the shelves. The knife clattered away. Marcus toppled his chair, rolling behind cover. The Zodge enforcers lunged. Jazz ducked the first punch, driving her elbow into the second man's gut. He grunted but didn't go down. These weren't schoolyard brawlers. A fist clipped her temple. Stars exploded in her vision. She stumbled, tasting blood. Then, gunshots. Ruiz's team stormed in, shouting. The enforcers bolted for the back. Jason scrambled after them. Jazz crawled to Marcus, yanking off his blindfold. "You okay?" He gasped as she peeled the tape off. "You're an idiot." Jazz grinned. "Yeah, but I'm your idiot." Ruiz hauled her up. "We got one of them. The other's in the wind." Jazz's dad burst in, his face ashen. He crushed her into a hug, then shook her hard. Asterisk never asterisk do that again. Over his shoulder, Jazz saw the captured enforcer being shoved into an FBI van. He turned at the last second, meeting her eyes, and winked. The FBI safe house was nicer than the last one. Jazz sat on a stiff couch, an ice pack pressed to her temple, while Ruiz debriefed them. "The enforcer's name is Victor Petrov," Ruiz said. "Mid-level Zodge operative. And he's very interested in you." Jazz's dad stiffened. "Meaning?" Ruiz set a file on the table. Inside was a photo of a flyer, an underground fight with a $20,000 prize. Victor's willing to deal. Information on the Zodge's U.S. operations, in exchange for Jazz. Jazz's stomach dropped. "Me? He wants you to fight. Says if you impress his boss, you could get recruited." Ruiz's gaze was steady. "We'd have you wired the whole time." Jazz's dad slammed his fist on the table. Asterisk no asterisk. Jazz stared at the flyer, then at Marcus, still pale from the kidnapping. "If I do this, he's safe?" "Everyone's safe." Ruiz nodded. "We'd relocate your friends. Full protection." Jazz's dad grabbed her shoulders. "You're 16. This isn't your fight." Jazz met his eyes. "Yeah, Dad. It is." She turned to Ruiz. "When do we start?" The warehouse smelled like sweat, blood, and cigarette smoke. Jazz adjusted the wire taped to her ribs, the tiny device itching beneath her sports bra. Ruiz's voice crackled in her earpiece. Asterisk, remember, we're listening. If anything goes south. Asterisk. "I know the signal," Jazz muttered, rolling her shoulders. Across the dimly lit space, Viktor Petrov leaned against the chain-link fence of the makeshift fighting cage, his arms crossed. The serpentine dagger tattoo coiled around his neck gleamed under the flickering fluorescence. He nodded at her, a smirk playing on his lips. "He's testing you," Ruiz whispered in her ear. Asterisk. "Don't give him everything at once." Asterisk. Jazz exhaled through her nose. She'd spent the last 2 weeks training for this. Not just boxing, but performance. How to throw a fight convincingly. How to take a hit without really taking it. How to make them believe she was desperate enough to play their game. A meaty hand clapped her on the back. "You're up next, little tiger." The promoter, a greasy-haired man with a gold tooth, leered at her. "Don't worry, sweetheart. First-timers get a warm-up round." Jazz didn't smile. "Who's my opponent?" Gold Tooth grinned. "Oh, you'll love her." The crowd parted as a figure stepped into the light. Jazz's stomach dropped. Tiffany Monroe. #hashtag the setup. Tiffany's designer clothes were gone, replaced by a tank top and leggings. Her face was free of makeup, her blonde hair pulled into a messy ponytail. But the real shock was her eyes. Hollow. Terrified. Jazz grabbed Gold Tooth's arm. "What the hell is this?" He shrugged. "Boss likes a good show. Rich girl versus street rat? Priceless." Victor's smirk widened. Ruiz's voice buzzed in Jazz's ear. Asterisk, they're onto us. Abort. Asterisk. Jazz ripped out the earpiece and crushed it under her shoe. The bell rang. #hashtag the fight. Tiffany lunged first, swinging wildly. Jazz dodged easily, catching her wrist. "Tiff, listen to me." Tiffany's whisper was frantic. "They have my dad. They said if I don't." A fist grazed Jazz's cheek. Not hard enough to hurt, hard enough to sell. The crowd roared. Jazz blocked the next punch, leaning in close. "Then we give them a show." She feigned a stumble, letting Tiffany shove her into the cage. The chain links rattled. Tiffany's eyes widened. She understood. For the next 3 minutes, they danced. Jazz pulled her punches, letting Tiffany look stronger than she was. Tiffany missed strikes by inches, her movements just sloppy enough to seem real. Victor's smile faded. Gold Tooth frowned. Then, a gunshot rang out. The crowd scattered. Ruiz's team stormed in, shouting. Tiffany dropped to her knees, sobbing. Victor locked eyes with Jazz across the chaos, and vanished. The FBI debriefing room was sterile and cold. Ruiz paced, her braids swinging. Victor knew. This was a setup from the start. Jazz's knuckles ached. "Where's Tiffany?" "Safe. Her dad's in custody. Turns out he was laundering Zaj money." Ruiz stopped pacing. "But Victor's still out there. And now he knows you're working with us." Jazz's dad stood by the window, his face grim. "It's over." Jazz met Ruiz's gaze. "No, it's not." She pulled out a crumpled note Victor had slipped her during the chaos. Asterisk, midnight. Pier 12. Come alone. Asterisk. Ruiz snatched it. "Absolutely not." Jazz stood. "You want it inside the Zaj? This is it." Her dad grabbed her arm. "It's a trap." Jazz smiled. "Yeah, his." Pier 12 was abandoned. the wooden planks creaking under Jazz's sneakers. The harbor air smelled of salt and diesel. Victor stepped from the shadows, his hands empty. No wire this time? Jazz spread her arms. Search me. He laughed. I like you, Devachka. Stupid, but brave. Where's your boss? Victor's smile faded. You don't want to meet him. He stepped closer. I came to warn you. Walk away. Your friends are safe. This fight isn't yours. Jazz clenched her fists. You kidnapped Marcus. You terrorized Tiffany. You made this personal. Victor sighed, then moved. His fist connected with her ribs before she could blink. Jazz staggered, gasping. Professional. She barely dodged the next strike, countering with a hook that Victor blocked easily. You're good, he admitted, but not this good. Jazz spat blood. Try me. The fight was brutal. Victor fought dirty. Elbows, knees, a knife that appeared from nowhere. Jazz's vision swam, but she pushed. Then, a gun cocked. Asterisk. Enough. Asterisk. Ruiz stepped from the darkness, her weapon trained on Victor. FBI agents surrounded them. Victor chuckled. Always the Fed to save you. Jazz wiped her mouth. Nah, this time I saved them. She pointed to Victor's pocket. His phone was recording everything. 1 month later, Jazz sat in a diner with Marcus and Tiffany, the morning sun streaming through the windows. Marcus shoved a newspaper across the table. Asterisk major crime ring busted. Dozens arrested. Asterisk. Tiffany sipped her milkshake. My dad got 5 years. She didn't sound upset. Jazz's phone buzzed. A text from Ruiz. Asterisk, you sure you don't want a job? Asterisk. She smiled and typed back. Asterisk, maybe after graduation. Asterisk. The bell over the door jingled. Jazz's dad walked in, tossing her a set of car keys. Training session in 10. Don't be late. Jazz stood, cracking her neck. Wouldn't miss it. As they walked out, a familiar black SUV rolled past. Victor sat in the passenger seat, his serpent tattoo visible. He raised a hand in mock salute. Jazz returned it. The war wasn't over. But today was good. The concrete floor of the warehouse was sticky beneath Jazz's sneakers, the air thick with the metallic tang of blood and the acrid sting of cigarette smoke. She kept her breathing steady as she adjusted the wire taped along her ribs, the tiny microphone itching against her skin. Remember, Ruiz's voice crackled in her earpiece. Asterisk, we need names. Locations. Anything that ties the Zaj to the trafficking ring. Don't engage unless... Asterisk. Jazz tapped the earpiece twice in acknowledgement, her eyes scanning the crowd. The warehouse was packed with men in expensive suits standing shoulder to shoulder with street-level thugs, all gathered around a chain-link cage illuminated by flickering industrial lights. Money changed hands in quick, furtive motions. Viktor Petrov emerged from the shadows, his serpent tattoo glistening under the harsh lights. He clapped a heavy hand on Jazz's shoulder, his breath reeking of vodka and mint. You fight tonight, little tiger, he murmured, his accent thick. Win, and maybe you meet real boss. Jazz forced herself not to shrug him off. Who am I fighting? Victor's grin revealed a gold-capped tooth. Special opponent. You will see. The crowd suddenly erupted as the cage door clanged open. Jazz turned and froze. A girl staggered into the ring, her dark hair matted with sweat, her knuckles wrapped in stained tape. Lena. Jazz's breath caught. Lena had been her sparring partner back in Detroit. The one who disappeared 6 months ago. Their eyes locked. Lena's widened in recognition, then fear. She gave an almost imperceptible shake of her head. Jazz! Ruiz's voice hissed in her ear. Asterisk. Abort. That's Lena Kovac, she was reported. Asterisk. Jazz ripped out the earpiece and crushed it under her heel. The bell rang. Hashtag, hashtag, hashtag the truth in the ring. Lena lunged first, her punch pulling just short of Jazz's jaw. They'll kill us both, she whispered between ragged breaths as Jazz blocked. Jazz feigned a strike to Lena's ribs. Who took you? Lena's eyes flicked to the crowd. Zaj scouts. They... A real punch suddenly connected with Jazz's shoulder, sending her stumbling back. Victor was watching. They fell into the rhythm of a real fight. Lena's strikes coming dangerously close, Jazz pulling her blows at the last second. The crowd roared as Jazz missed a hook, letting Lena drive her into the cage. "Listen," Lena gasped, pinning her. "There's a shipment tonight. Girls. 12 of them. Pier 17. A gunshot cracked through the warehouse. The crowd scattered as FBI agents stormed in. Lena seized Jazz's wrist. "They'll move them now. You have to." Victor appeared behind Lena, a syringe glinting in his hand. Jazz reacted without thinking, a sharp uppercut that sent Victor staggering. She grabbed Lena's arm. "Run!" They barely made it 3 steps before more Zaj enforcers blocked the exit. Victor wiped blood from his lip, laughing. "Oh, Devachka, you just signed her death warrant." Rain lashed against the abandoned shipping containers at Pier 17, the storm masking their footsteps as Jazz and Lena crouched behind a rusted crane. "They load them in container B-42, Lena whispered, her hand shaking. "It's rigged to look like a seafood shipment." Jazz's phone buzzed. Her dad. She ignored it. The FBI was too slow. Too visible. A shout echoed across the docks. Jazz peered around the crane. 6 Zaj enforcers were herding a group of girls toward a refrigerated truck. The youngest couldn't have been more than 14. Lena made a strangled noise. "That's the group I was with. They're sending them too." A hand clamped over Jazz's mouth. "Marcus." His face was pale under the dim dock lights. "Ruiz is 10 minutes out. We need to go." Jazz shook her head, pointing to the truck. Marcus's grip tightened. "Jazz, no." She twisted free. Then the world exploded in gunfire. #### the ambush. Jazz hit the ground as bullets pinged off the crane. The Zaj enforcers scattered, 2 dropping instantly. Victor emerged from the chaos, dragging one of the captive girls in front of him as a human shield. "Jasmine Carter," he bellowed. "You want her? Come and take her." Jazz lunged. A figure tackled Victor from the side. Jason. The former wrestling captain grappled with Victor, the girl breaking free. Jazz sprinted toward them. A gunshot. Jason collapsed, clutching his stomach. Victor raised his weapon. Jazz's fist connected with his jaw. The fight was a blur. Elbows, knees, Victor's knife glinting in the rain. Jazz barely dodged a slash to her throat, countering with a brutal hook to his ribs. Victor staggered. Then, a second gunshot. Victor's head snapped back. He crumpled. Jazz whirled. Cole Richter stood 10 feet away, smoke curling from his pistol. Alive! The warehouse fire should have been visible for miles, but the storm swallowed the flames. Jazz pressed a wad of fabric to Jason's bleeding abdomen as Cole paced. "You're dead," she hissed. "The FBI pulled your body from the river." Cole's smile was grim. Zaj fakes deaths better than they fake seafood shipments. He kicked Victor's lifeless body. "This bastard was supposed to be my ticket in. Then you ruined everything." Sirens wailed in the distance. Cole leveled his gun at Jazz. "You should have stayed in your lane, champ." A pipe struck the back of his head. Marcus stood there, breathing hard. "Nobody shoots, my friends." Jazz grabbed Jason's arm. "Hold on. Help's coming." Jason coughed blood. "Tell Tiffany." His hand went limp. Ruiz's voice echoed through the rain. "FBI, drop your weapons." Cole was gone. 3 days later, Jazz stood at Jason's grave. Tiffany placed a single white rose on the casket. "He texted me that night," she whispered. "Said he was making things right." The rain had returned, mingling with the tears on Marcus's cheeks. Ruiz approached, her badge gleaming. "We got 12 girls home because of you." Jazz stared at the fresh dirt. "And how many did we miss?" Ruiz hesitated, then handed her a file. Inside was a photo of Cole Richter boarding a private jet. The timestamp was yesterday. Jazz closed the file. The war wasn't over, but she knew where to find him.